there are two planes, two levels on which we live our life. There is the conscious plane and there is the unconscious plane. The conscious plane is that which we are familiar with our likes and dislikes, with our daily activities. We would be, we would claim to know that we are aware why we do the things we do, and that we know why we behave the thing, why we behave the way we behave, etc. And then there is the unconscious, which operates, which uses the conscious to further itself, to manifest itself. That unconscious is the complete journey, the evolution of man. In that unconscious lies the million years of our development. It lies the within that unconscious lies the millions of years of our evolutions, of the nervous system which operates to protect itself, to conserve itself. In that unconscious is the force which operates the conscious, which operates us. It is in some way an urge which makes us react in the conscious plane, which makes us do things at the conscious level. And if we are completely unaware of how this unconscious operates, we will always be a tool, a puppet at the hands of this unconscious. Our old tendencies, our past ways of doing things would manifest in our present life, in our everyday situations. The whole unconscious will begin to guide our everyday activities. Whatever we pursue, whatever we desire would be coming from this unconscious. And the conscious may claim that it is its own decision, that it is its own will to act in that way, to behave in the manner it does, but it is the unconscious that is actually operating through the conscious in our daily life. It is the force of the unconscious which makes us do the things we do. We would hear something, we would pick up patterns of behavior, we would pick up certain mannerisms and then start to emulate them in our conscious, at our conscious plane, in our daily life. And without knowing that the way we behave, our reactions are actually an emulation a imitation of what has gone within, of what is already fed to the unconscious, and what it already contained. The complete past of humanity along with the recent past of our particular life mixes and results in our so called conscious behavior. It is a causation that has its root in ancient time and in the recent span of our life, and it is, and our actions, our urges, our behavior is a refined result of this long chain of causality. The unconscious dictates the smallest detail, thought and feeling of our life, and the more conscious choices, efforts and decisions in our everyday living. We might not be aware of the working of the unconscious, but it is always working within and directing, dictating our life every moment, from our fear to our joy, from our insecurity to the things in which we feel secure in. All of it is directed by the unconscious. The fear of darkness, the instant attention that we pay to any sound, any loud sound in the environment, are the result of our ancient past, when the mind, we have to talk about the journey of the mind, and when the mind was in the jungle, it was in fact afraid of the darkness because it feared an attack from the predator. Any loud noise that we pay a quick attention to in our environment is again the function of that unconscious, because we had to, in the jungle, pay attention to any predator approaching us. So our smallest of smallest thought, fear or feeling is the result of the journey that the mind has taken from the single cell to now this complex, sophisticated structure of neurons. In the things that we feel insecurity, being alone, or not having food made us react in disturbing ways in the jungle. Being alone meant, being alone involved a sense of danger, a sense of danger which would involve a surprise attack at any moment, and that is why we fear being alone today too our discomfort in being with ourselves is rooted in the unconscious past. We always sought security in a group, in a pack, and that is exactly why we feel at we feel an unease when we are by ourselves. That is why we rely on groups, we rely on society, we rely on a pack, we rely on this nuclear structure of family that we currently have. And this nuclear structure also comes from the unconscious, from the old roots of the mind. The things that we feel, that we felt a sense of security with, was in a group, was when there was food in our stomach. It was when we were younger, the older ones were around us. The sense of security that we felt when we were young is again rooted in the old unconscious of the mind, because the younger one have always depended because the younger one have always depended on the older ones for their security. And that is why today too, when we are young, we look up to the nearest older person for security. All of our behavior, all of our likes and dislikes are again a result of the unconscious. We refrain from any physical discomfort, we refrain from any outward stress or work, because the older mind always looked for the security of the body. And it is that primitive need for bodily security that also is alive in our conscious today. All of our need for security would always boil down to the past, the old ancient past, and the recent past of our particular life, because we have seen that there is security in a house, that there is security in keeping some money aside, and that is why today we seek for security in a structure around us, in some amount left aside. They may or may not have an inward security, but we come to believe that our total security, inward and outward, of the physical body and of the mind, is completely related to the outward arrangement and the outward condition of the things. We have come to believe that when there is a house, there are people around us, there is an amount that we have safely secured in a box, when when all these things are cared for, that is when we would have that security. But is that really the case? Are we really secure when we are completely physically secure? Is an inward security a byproduct of the physical security? Are they related in any way? Or our inward security is completely in some place else, and being inwardly insecure, we find security in these outward places, in a family or in a house. Having all of these physical things around us, we may still feel the insecurity that is within, and that inner insecurity, that inward insecurity has to be treated inwardly. We cannot rely on what the older mind relied on for security, what our unconscious dictates us to do might just be useful at a certain point, but beyond that point it only limits our life, it limits the possibilities of complete freedom within ourselves. The unconscious, if not seen, not checked, not examined, will completely direct our life in the ways that we would never know. We keep on securing we work tirelessly to secure everything outwardly, but inwardly there is still this feeling of insecurity within, because we have come to think, we still think in those older patterns, in those, the unconscious still is in operation within, which tells us that it is the outward security that we only have to take care of. And we conflate the outer and the inward security. Outward security does not facilitate an inward security. We may keep things outwardly secure, but inwardly there has to be work done within for that security to take birth within us, for that security to be discovered within us. Our primitive tendencies will dictate our behavior, our likes and dislikes, the way we talk, the way we think. We will always find ourselves dancing on the tunes of our primitive needs, and then in that way, if we live the life according to the primitive tendencies, we will find that the life we are living is completely alien to ourselves. We are living, we may think we are living, but what we are really living is a borrowed old life that is repeating itself in our particular life. It is through the life that we have right now that we can unravel, discover how the unconscious repeats itself again and again in every life form, in human beings. It is the same old structure, the same old pattern. Deeply it stays the same. Outwardly there may be changes, there may be advances, there may be technological development, but inwardly those tendencies will go on to direct those advancements, those development, and that primitive set of principles will stay as it is. We will still fight each other, be violent towards each other for our personal security. We would still be jealous of each other. We would still go on to be sorrowful about the same things that we were sorrowful about in the past. All our tragedies, sorrows will only be a repetition in and among themselves. The sorrow that we lived millions of years ago and that we have been living for thousands of years will just keep on repeating itself in our own particular life. There will be no personal sorrow, there would be no personal problem that we face. All of it would be so general, so generic, that it has happened multiple times, and that is all that has happened. To come to a unique problem also requires for us to look at how we are living our lives today. Otherwise, all our problems would be exactly the same. They would have new faces, they would have new names, but essentially they would remain the same. It would be my fear, my insecurity, my loneliness, my angst within. All of these fundamentally will stay the same. I would never be able to comprehensively look at the life that I live if I am not aware of how this unconscious is again through me repeating itself in a newer form, with a newer name. The unconscious dictates the kind of relationship that I want to have. The unconscious dictates the choice of food that I want to have. The unconscious dictates the kind of life that I will be living. The quality of relationships that I have would be the same as they were earlier, and it would be just a use of one another in a relationship. There would be no actual real relationship ever. We would just conveniently in a relationship use each other, whether it be a partnership, whether it will be a close personal relationship. We will find that it would only serve us as a use case and nothing much more than that, as always a support for us to rely on. Our relationship would become a support system because we in ourselves are disabled, and this disabled being would rely on another disabled being for support to stand on, and how when both of them, when in a relationship, the two parties that are involved, each of them are unable to stand themselves on their own feet, how can they give support to the other? If I am lonely within myself and the other person is lonely within themselves, how can our relationship address the loneliness that we have? We may just fool ourselves into thinking that being with somebody else would address the problem of my loneliness, but I will find, if I look deeply, that in spite of being with someone, I am still lonely, and it is the relationship, and the relationship is just an equation of each other's loneliness and nothing else. Having a company would not necessarily address the problem of loneliness within me. I may be able to fool myself that the engagements, that the time that is spent together was a time where I forgot my loneliness, but that is not the case. It just submerged for few moments, and then again it will come up on the surface. So the way I behave, the way I act in my life, the things that I am concerned about are all the function of the unconscious that I allow to dictate my life. And in my own particular life, I will find that consciously, that at the conscious plane, I would assert that no, there is no unconscious operating within me, that no, all the decisions that I make are my own, but then that assertion is a belief, it is just a abstraction that we have come to rely on, that we think that every decision is ours, that we think every reaction in our life is in fact our own. And this tendency to assert that no, I am really free within, that no, all my actions, my behavior, the way I am around people, the way I talk, all of it is mine. But that's really not the case. That assertion is unimportant, that assertion does not hold any value. That assertion is simply shallow, hollow. It has no substance behind it. We have to have this humility within to really see how the force of the unconscious is what dictates our life at every second. There is nothing random in our behavior that happens without the authority of the unconscious. We may think it is random, we may think it is something generic or even original that happened, but that's not the case. every thought, every feeling has a cause behind it, and that cause is, and that cause could be how we act, how we are in that moment physically, mentally, the old unconscious. The exact cause can never be determined because there are so many possibilities that come together to make up that thought, that feeling, that action. And the reason we behave the way we behave, the reason we talk the way we talk, we come upon and decide things that we decide for ourselves, is have multiple faculties that are within us. These multiple faculties together, these multiple influences within us, all come up together to dictate, to decide that thought, to in the form of that feeling. They come up together in form of that behavior, in form of that decision. And so we have to come close to the reality of our life. We have to know closely, directly, our behavior and how it is completely dictated by the environment we live in, by the way we are brought up, by the state of our physical body, by the state and influences of the mind. Our mind is vulnerable to so many things, from being outside in the open to being inside in a closed room, from coming into the exposure of one kind of light to coming in to the exposure of another kind of light, to seeing one color and to seeing another color. All of these things direct the way we behave, direct the way we talk. From the kind of clothes that we wear to the way we walk, all of it is a result of an influence. And this influence is distributed. The causality of it, from the point that is emerges, from the point that the thought, that behavior emerges, is within itself coming from 100 other different places. Our entire existence is a manifestation of the 1,000 influences that are acting upon us constantly. And all we can do is to watch them, is to be aware of how and why we do certain things, of how we conduct ourselves in a particular matter, in a particular manner. If we do not pay attention, if we are not aware of these influences, the conditioning of our own experiences, manipulating our life constantly, we are living an alien life, a life that we really do not know, a life that we are completely unfamiliar with. We may claim to be familiar with the kind of life that we live, we may claim to know that why we behave the way we do, we may claim to know that why we like the things we like, but behind all of this is a mechanism, is a structure that is working that we are completely ignorant of. If we do not see how these things shape up our life, if we do not see how they form who we are, our existence would just be a show of imitations, a show. Our existence would be a borrowed existence. Our life would be just a copy, a duplicate of what is being going on, of the thousand other copies which form a copy that takes the shape of our body and our name. In just a different body and a different name, it is the same old past, the same old influences that are operating. There is nothing new about us. We may claim or we may think of ourselves as unique, we may think of ourselves as someone different, but all we are is a result of these myriads of conditioning influences that are acting upon us constantly. And when we are in the spell, in the control of these multiple unconscious forces that are dictating our lives, what we are living and what we are even sorrowful of about is meaningless. Our happiness, the things that we are joyful about, the things we are sorrowful about, all of them hold no substance. It is a made up thing that we are living. It is, our life is a complete make believe. The sorrow that we are sorrowful about is not the real sorrow. The things that we are really happy about are not in themselves to be, the things that we are happy about are not in themselves cheerful. All of it is a made up structure. The ideas that we think that are ours, the thinking that we think is ours, the principles that we have come to believe are ours, are not ours. They are just an expansion of this unconscious that is operating, that has been operating in man. The mind, which is so old, it is still working in its old ways, but has taken the shape of a newer form. And then it gives its old ways just a newer expansion which looks different, which appears different, but it is just an extension of its old ways. There is no real development, there is no real evolution that ever happens when it comes to outward forms, when it comes to the function, when it comes to the outward development, the physical development. There we have traveled a long way, but within us we have not moved an inch. It is still the same old primitive tendencies on which that direct our life. We may call ourselves as the citizens of a modern civilization, but the outward mask of us is only modern. Inwardly, it is the same old primitive thought, primitive tendency that operates. There is nothing modern about us inwardly. There is nothing new about us, about the way we are living our lives deeply. The facilities that we use may have changed, the equipments that we use outwardly may have changed, but it is the same psyche, that same mind that still operates with its violent ways, with its expansionist ideas, with its jealousy, with its fear, with its anger, with its tendency to possess, to have, to accumulate. It is these same primitive tendencies that are in operation with a modern facade. Our relationship with each other, our relationship with nature still runs on those same patterns of use and abuse. We only operate in this utilitarian manner, that what is the utility of that tree, what is the utility of this space, what is the utility of the living beings around us. We only see them in utilitarian terms. That is what was happening primitively thousands of years ago, and that is what is happening right now. We see nature as something to be used and then to be abused. Our use of nature would inevitably turn into abuse, because that pattern in which we operate still hasn't changed. And that is why there is nothing modern about the way we currently live our lives. It is still that same ancient primitive tendency that is operating. We still operate in those barbaric ways of fighting, killing, using. We may call ourselves human, but there is nothing human about the way we live our lives. The old animal is still present in this human body, and in fact the body is still of the animal. We are unable to see past, to look past the biological conditioning that we are so familiar and used to. It is when we look past our conditioning, it is when we will move away from our primitive ways of life. Only then there can be something modern about us. Only then it will be fit to call ourselves a modern civilization. until then we are the same old animal amidst a different modern looking jungle.